Hi. Before we get started with this week's episode, I just have a short message for my kids. Kids, if you're hearing my voice right now, you need to stop. You know you are not allowed to listen to this podcast. When I started the podcast, I did not fully understand that you would have access to it through your iPads. This is not for you. I promise I will tell you all these stories when you're older, but for now, you need to turn this off. Go ahead and listen to Tenacious D, that's fine. And if you're friends with my kids, you should probably turn this off too. If you're the parents of my kids' friends, please rate, review, and share. Okay, back to the show. Hello and welcome to La Jolla Babylon, Season 1, The Making of a Suburban Punk. A podcast where I tell stories of my unsupervised Gen X youth to my coddled millennial little sister, who happens to be the funniest person I know, the writer, actor, and comedian, Katie Hartman. I'm your host, Aaron Hartman.
We can talk about something more exciting. We could actually start. Did we start?
Oh, yeah. Let's start. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Sorry. Okay. Fuck, I'm so bad at this. Okay. No, okay. Here we go. No, seriously. This is happening.
No, for reals, though, this time.
Okay. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Aaron.
Welcome back to another episode of La Jolla Babylon.
Thank you. And you welcome as well.
Thank you. We're welcome.
We're welcome. I mean, now if you want, you can put that 5-minute talk about weather here. if you wanted to include that chit chat about weather.
Yes.
And heat.
Yes. We for the listening audience, we just had a incredibly boring conversation about the weather, and then we realized that we had not started the podcast yet.
Speak for yourself. I found it extremely stimulating, and I'll be thinking about it for the rest of my life.
Well, at least for the rest of the day, because it's hot out there. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so now you can.
So I'm really excited actually about what you're going to listen to today.
Yeah.
Today is, I think today's a turning point in the story because, as I mentioned last time, we meet the character who's called Dan Jones here, who is going to be in many of the chapters coming up. And as I said before, like my dumb adventures with him was really what inspired me to start writing about anything. Because I don't know if you've had this experience, but where you're like talking, to like a new friend, and you're, like when you meet somebody and you're like, okay, here are like the stories that you need to know to get to know me. Right. And maybe it's the like kids at camp not wanting to sleep in your bunk because you had, or whatever, like that, like here, like that's one, you know what I mean? Or maybe it's, whatever. And so, and
I had forgotten that I said that. Thank you for reminding me, bringing me back that trauma. Yeah. Jesus.
Sorry. See, that's the thing is like they're like they're stories, and they're also like these little like little trips back into your own trauma, which is okay. Another aside, like I am really learning, like as I'm listening back to what we've talked about, and also kind of narrating, like how I really think about these stories as being funny, and when people have heard them, they're like, my dude. It's kind of a lesson because, and I don't know if it's like just because I'm so Gen X and like everything is ironic or, meta, or because like it's a coping mechanism where I'm kind of like, what? It's funny. But like, so I am learning a little bit. So
okay.
Because we're learning, right?
I love learning. I also hate learning. So it's great. Right. It's great. That's learning is tough sometimes. And sometimes I'm like, I'm done learning. I'm good. I'm filled. I don't know to cram anything else in there. But yeah, no, I think that that's very funny. I think that that's for anyone who's like gotten through something and looks back on it with like some relief, some humor.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think that's the best way to process stuff. But I also probably have a lot to process.
I believe you are a comedic person because you are processing.
Yeah, 100%. It's more fun to process with humor. You know what I mean?
I mean, I remember you took that comedy class when you were in college, and it culminated in a like 3-minute set at a club in New York.
Yeah, did you see that?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, did you really?
Yeah, I was there.
That's crazy. I forgot that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like the truth is funny and also tragedy is funny.
Well, I think that tragedy is overwhelming sometimes, and so to get through it, to move through it's best to find what is funny about it, at least for me.
Right. I think you've thought about that more than me. Yeah, that sounds no, but
every day of my life, how can I make this really sad thing funny? Oh man, I'm laughing, but why am I laughing? Oh, but it is funny.
Look over here.
Yeah.
Before I got distracted by all that,
you were going to bring up Dan Jones and like these are stories. Yeah.
Well, no, just how like when you meet somebody and you have your kind of like your bank of stories that kind of tell your life, right?
Totally.
And so I started kind of trying to get those down, and it's had to start with this guy, you know.
Yeah. Should we break?
Yeah, so let's break and just so we know you are going to be. Hold on, let me find the shit here. It is okay. You're going to be listening to chapters 20 to 23. It's about 26 minutes of your listening time.
Precious life.
Of your precious life.
Of my one wild and precious life.
I'll say another precious day of your precious life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great.
All right. Have fun, and I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Trial, Part 2. I was loafing around my dad's house when he tersely informed me that my mom was on her way over. We were to have a discussion about my drug use. "And what drugs are these?" I snapped. "We'll talk about that when she gets here. Why don't you go to your room and wait for us to meet you up there?" He was calm and confident. He knew something. I thought, they're not bluffing, but what could they know? And how did they find out? I paced my room, racking my sober brain, retracing my steps. I followed my mom's trajectory in a terrified state. She must have felt psychic as she looked in my nightstand drawer, saw my broken Walkman, and opened the battery compartment. I was toast. I feverishly began planning my defense. What angle to use? What about the Fourth Amendment? All stoners know a little constitutional law. Sounds attorney, I took the offense, sharpening my attack strategy, sweating out my opening speech. I heard the front door open and Mom's bracelets clanging, and anticipated the footsteps leading to my room. They didn't come. I sat on my dusty hideaway couch, waiting. I stared at my alarm clock for 10 minutes, then peered down the steps and heard nothing but the snapping of my mother's gum. They were whispering. My parents were compiling a case. I crept up on them from the kitchen. "Can we please get started, please?" As if I had other, more pressing meetings that afternoon. Unfortunately, the way my 15-year-old voice actually sounded was whiny and impatient, like I was bored and wanted to watch MASH reruns, which was true. It worked. They got up from their conference and followed me upstairs. Keep him on the run, Dad had taught me. In chess, even with a shabby offense, it's best to keep your opponent reacting to your moves, so long as they can't execute their own strategy. I had never challenged this wisdom, but since that afternoon, I've taken a less slash-and-burn approach to board games and other more serious personal matters. They sat on the couch, forcing me to sit on my broken office chair like I was applying for a job or parole. They sat next to each other, almost touching at the knee. The only other time I could remember seeing them sit together was at my therapist's. They looked at me. I decided to strike first, as if I had called them over for the meeting. First of all, I started, I would like to say to you, Mom, fuck you. Fuck you for disrespecting my freedom of privacy, and fuck you for disrespecting me as a person. My third fuck you was cut off by my father. He was not afraid to raise his voice to the family. I don't know if he understood this, but his then undiagnosed manic depression could sometimes turn this otherwise diminutive, sweet, and nurturing parent into a pretty scary man. He was also a better chess player than I. His defense turned into quite a strong offense. How dare you? Who do you think you are talking to your mother like that? His bottom teeth were doing this thing they would do when he got mad. It was like they'd move on their own, twisting backwards. She's not the one running around, lying and doing drugs and hiding things. I believe that would be you. Grades, my choice of friends, and generally lethargic presence were reviewed. My mother got distracted and started to criticize how messy my room was. She was getting more and more specific, going further back in time, until my father steered her back to the task at hand. Round and round we went. I was indignant, trying to hide my guilt behind anything I could think of. They were buying none of it. We paced each other for a while, circling. Then, a surprise leap from the top rope. My mother looked at my father and clasped her hands. We're sending you to the McDonald Center for an evaluation. My parents insisted they merely wanted me to be observed by a professional under a controlled setting. But the McDonald Center was legendary among my peers for scaring parents into sending their kids away, some for 6 months at a time. My friend Margot spent almost all of 11th grade in rehab there. We all knew her mother really just wanted her out of the house. The meeting adjourned, and things went back to normal for a while. I threw smoldering looks of contempt when I felt like it, and was appropriately ignored. My teen years had officially begun. Fear and Loathing. Gene eventually found work selling videos at the big flea market in Point Loma. He bought a Ford Aerostar that he stuffed with folding tables, racks, and VHS tapes. He would wake up at 6 to get there by 7 and be all set up by 8. I would hear him in the kitchen at daybreak, smashing ice cubes into his little red cooler. It was a startling sound, but I eventually learned to expect it. He worked every weekend, and during summer, he was there every day. Friends told me he mostly sold porn, which made me like him a little more. During the summer, Gene was always gone by the time I got out of bed, and I was always gone by the time he came back in the afternoon. It was unspoken, but clearly agreeable to us both. And here I was, a smelly teenager, fighting with my mom, making a mess with my microwavable chili dog burrito, laying on our nice couch, wasting another precious day of my precious life. This is why you decided not to go to camp? So you could sit around all day and watch TV? I don't think so. My mother started a "what are you doing with your life" argument, and I got defensive. What about you and Dad? I thought I was going to the McDonald's Center. I thought you guys were all concerned about my health and safety. Who's dropping the ball? Boom. No. 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 Are you sure about that? Do you mean, am I lying? No. The drug in question was crystal meth. We called it crystal back then. It was getting popular with kids my age, but I didn't think much about it. Friends referred to it as a girl drug because it made you lose weight. She asked me twice more before concluding the drug use portion of the intake questionnaire. My overly experienced friend, Charles, had once told me that mushrooms could not be detected in drug tests. I was trying to channel his integrity during my interview at the McDonald's Center. Come across like an expert in all fields in order to shock my interrogator into apologetic submission. What about mushrooms? I've done mushrooms twice. You never asked me about them. But Charles had filled me up with so much misinformation, hyperbole, and lies that my impersonation of him came across as dangerously naive. Luckily, there were no mirrors in the room. In my mind, I was sitting there defiant, Iggy Pop at the Paris airport, fucking with the security guards for the hell of it. I just finished Lenny Bruce's biography. I was in the middle of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I was all these guys, above it all, seeing the true nature of this whole corporate bullshit world. So I dug myself a little deeper. When she brought my family into the room, the interviewer twisted some of my answers to convey a sense of menace and urgency. She recommended a 10-day overnight observation. My parents said they'd think about it. When we left the McDonald's Center, Mom and I sat in her car for a long time. We both stared out from our windows, looking at the other parked cars baking in the glare. I expected to see kids like me being lugged through the lobby by parents like mine. What I mostly saw were middle-aged women standing around in sweatpants, smoking. My mother closed her eyes. When I die, I don't want to be buried. I want to be cremated, and I want you and Sharon to take my ashes to the end of the pier in La Jolla and drop them into the water. That's where I feel closest to God. I know it's not kosher, but that's what I want. And truthfully, no one would come to my funeral anyway. I didn't look at her, but said, "Okay." Time passed. She said, "I can feel your anger," and started the car. In the end, I was never sent to rehab. My parents decided to trust their gifted and talented son to make the right decisions and all that. But the close call stuck with me. If they brought me to scare me straight, it backfired. I believed in very little at the time, but seeing my liberty so nearly snatched away taught me a lesson I would learn over and over. Your life is your own. Do what you want, because you never know. I was not interested in drugs. What I wanted was to live free. Dan Jones. Dan Jones arrived leading a pack of skateboarding boys, rail sliding, grinding, and hopping over curbs and down stairwells. He looked like he was thinking about something else, like these killer tricks were happening to him. His jaw was chiseled, and his forehead protruded a bit, which cast a constant shadow over his eyes. When he skated, he never broke a sweat, and he never smiled. His brother had given him a bright red mohawk the night before the first day of 10th grade. Dan Jones and I were in 6 out of 7 classes together. The summer before 10th grade, Dan had gotten a powerful job, which brought me into his sphere of influence. He worked at a pizza shop by the beach and had the authority to give away slices. I'd hate to know how many hours I spent on one of the 3 stools in the tiny Brooklyn Pizza. I was drifting through my own low-level curriculum because of my seminar debacle, but there must have been some mistake with Dan Jones. For some reason, this kid's shining intellect and creative output were never noticed by the school district or his own family. In class, while the other kids doodled in the margins of their textbooks, Dan Jones sat bolt upright. His memory was flawless. In English class, he settled a quiet bet by running up to our teacher's desk, triumphantly pulling the Cliff's Notes of Gilgamesh from behind her textbook. He could smell a cheat. We were the worst students in all of our remedial classes. After PE, I'd wait around for him to lace up his 18-hold combat boots, talking shit, trying to make him laugh, which made us late to math. Every morning, I would stand downstairs and look towards my mother's room, waiting for her. I would sometimes hear the shower go on at the time we needed to leave. I was always late to first period history. Dan Jones would sneak in and sit next to me. He made sense to me. You know how parents always talk about how teenagers think they're invincible? I kind of think like that. I mean, I know I can get hurt, but I don't think I'll ever get caught doing anything bad. I can make myself invisible. Not really, but you know what I mean. Dan and I were climbing the back fence of our school's PE field on our way to the beach. Anyone looking in our direction could see us clearly, like 2 flies walking across a TV screen. We had gotten very good at climbing fences. And if I do get caught, so what? I mean, seriously, what if we disappeared? What if we never showed up to detention? What would happen if we just did what we wanted? Nothing. Adults are constantly lying to us to get us to do what they want. Why shouldn't we lie back to them? It was true. Dan Jones and I had developed a rhythm and were starting to get in trouble together. But nothing ever came of it. The teacher was mad. The vice principal was mad. Our families were mad. But so were we. I was a sophomore at the wealthiest public high school south of Beverly Hills. My glamorous classmates drove nicer cars than our teachers ever would. My new school was what the first 15 minutes of most 1980s slasher films look like, before the bloodletting. Healthy, toothy students who were able to balance surfing and college apps with schoolwork and weekend parties roamed freely through the open campus, sometimes tanning themselves between classes. To the beach. Our biology teacher was consistently 10 minutes late to class. Mr. Denali's tardiness was clearly due to his lunchtime pot-smoking routine. He would arrive sweating, chewing gum, and wearing aviator sunglasses. Sometimes he'd do things like plug in a slideshow projector, walk past it, and trip over the cord, spilling its contents everywhere. He was kind of a mess. Dan and I started taking extra long lunches and would arrive to class a casual 7 or 8 minutes late. We just figured. This worked until the day we did not see our classmates waiting patiently outside for our biology teacher. Denali had arrived early, let his students inside, and waited for us. He had a thing for Dan Jones, that annoying thing where a teacher thinks he sees a spark of something special in a student, so he takes an interest. He wanted Dan to make something of himself, to prove all the bastards wrong. He probably thought he saw a bit of himself in Dan and wanted to make a difference, like a fire and brimstone preacher saving a sinner from hell. But my friend's scholastic soul was too far gone. We walked into the classroom to find Denali standing next to his desk, tapping his teeth with a pen, looking at the clock. He had not started his lesson. He looked at us, or at least towards us, through his mirrored glasses. "You're 9 minutes late." We shrugged and slinked towards our seats. He told us to stand at the back of the class. When we perched ourselves on the back counter, he moved swiftly down the aisle, tearing off his sunglasses. "I told you to stand." He screamed that by disrespecting our peers and our teacher, we had lost our right to sit. As he walked back to the front of the class, Dan Jones and I made a quick sideways glance and left the room. We ran back to the beach, where we talked about our families. I told him about how my dad saved kids with cancer, and how he cheated on my mom, and how he meditates, and how I still thought he was a good father, even though he seemed to be raising his second crop of kids with more generosity. I told him that I always knew when dinner was ready at my house because my mother burned whatever she cooked and set off the smoke alarm every night. I told him about seeing a swastika spray painted on a wall near our house, and my mother giving me a can of paint and instructing me to deface it. He told me his father was working in Alaska as an underwater welder, and that his mother was untrustworthy and gullible. He used those exact words. Nothing was worse to Dan than being gullible. He told me his mom would give him a ride anywhere, but she would never pick him up. So he hitched or walked home from shows in the middle of the night. He said she wanted to marry her current boyfriend because he had rescued her from the Scientologists. Although Dan now lived in La Jolla, San Diego's most coveted coastal community, as he put it, his family was working class. When Dan was born out of wedlock, his mother, Darlene, was disowned by her father, a powerful corporate attorney. After a few years and one more child, her motorcycle-riding, drug-dealing boyfriend moved out, and Darlene's parents condescended to allow her and her boys to live in various rental houses they owned around town. They had to move every couple years as the houses were renovated or sold. She paid a slightly reduced rent, and Dan Jones never stayed at one school for very long. I think my grandpa paid my dad off to leave my mom alone. I guess my grandfather is rich. All of his children hate him. He's a judge downtown now. He's racist. He's so racist that my Uncle Mike ran away from home when he was my age, and when he came back, he changed his name to the last thing his father would want to call him. Uncle Mike's legal name is now Gandhi Abdul McWong. I'm serious. Having been raised wealthy, Darlene never took her own finances seriously enough to save money. Throughout my friendship with Dan Jones, his mother never stayed at the same job for more than a few months. Her boyfriend had been her manager at the computer store she was temping at. He was originally from Spain and frequently made the case for deporting all Mexicans. He drove a high-rise truck and timed people's showers with a stopwatch. He would charge 50 cents a minute after the first 3 minutes. The walls were cluttered with dozens of photographs of Dan's mother's boyfriend surfing, and not a single picture of Dan or his little brother. Dan Jones had an earnest, mercurial smile and a soft, polite countenance, which was often confusing to parents and strangers as he held doors open for old people and said please and thank you. It was confusing to me too. We talked about how much nicer you have to be when you make yourself look scary. His mohawk alternated between a fan and Liberty spikes, and he dressed from his impressive collection of band shirts, Dayglow Abortions, Circle Jerks, Bad Religion, those guys. The spikier his hair and the freakier my clothes got, the brighter our outer dispositions became in public. It was something we worked on. We talked about the future in hypothetical terms. Making plans for the weekend would sound like we were writing scripts for cartoons. We had grave discussions about what the conditions our lives would have to be in for us to become pirates. We both took fencing classes, just in case. Dan and I would sometimes ditch school to take the bus to the head shop in Ocean Beach to buy books. He bought books about lockpicking, making fake passports, making bombs, surviving nuclear war, changing identities, and beating lie detector tests. I bought fiction by Raymond Chandler and Günter Grass. I left La Jolla High to go to Muir Alternative School in the middle of 10th grade. Dan had been researching how to become an emancipated minor and took a test to get out of high school at the same time. He started taking classes at Mesa Community College, which was next door to my new school. Sometimes Dan would pick me up on his motorcycle after school. He had 2 helmets and would make me wear the pink one, on which someone had written the word fag.
And we're back.
Hi.
Hi.
So you went on a little journey.
Went on a little journey.
Okay, good.
Well, you went on a little journey, and I just went with you. I mean, first of all, dang, when you started off in the writing and saying that you just said "fuck you" to your mom, I literally gasped. I was like, "Oh no!"
Oh, good.
Oh my gosh.
So stupid. Such a
I know
dumb
that's
move.
so naive of me, but also like
No, it was naive of me.
I loved these chapters. I loved listening to these. I mean,
good.
Yeah, it's just it does like it's such a particular time in one's life, and
Yeah.
it just felt like you like had wedged yourself into this really specific personality. You know what I mean? Like, or like really trying to find, I don't know, yourself, or find like what the meaning of life was, and for you to be free. I loved the ending of that. The first or second I think it was the second chapter. I loved the ending of that.
Cool. Thanks.
Because it also, you know, when people evaluate teens, sort of what we talked about before, you know, when they're not trying to like scare their parents into giving them money to like quote unquote take care of their teenager. Like it's so much their values they're trying to like push upon you, you know, or anyone, and that's like anything, you know, it's like conversion therapy. It's like, well, this is just, you know,
there's one way to be, and it's, you know, and not, it's not even like, you know, out of all the ways of being, this is the way that we are. It's just, like, I think that, you know, it's weird to say the words like, but like back then, But I don't think that people really had a sense that that people could live other ways, even though our parents grew up in the fucking 60s. Do you know what I mean? Or at least were alive in the 60s.
That's the thing that like sort of always surprises me when they're surprised by like a little counterculture action. You know what I mean? Where it's like, nah, man, you were surrounded by it. It's not that it died off. It just like has filtered into something else.
Right.
You know? And like, looking like that whole, like me thinking about that evaluation of you when they were just like, he despises middle class values or whatever. Yeah. It's just like, what does that even fucking mean to a teenager?
Well, and also like, that's good, right? You know what I mean? It's
totally.
Like, wait, is that? Oh, in your world, that's bad. You know
right.
what I mean?
Oh, I'm hard to control because I have independent thought.
Yeah.
You know, like I have like an original. Well, I mean, as original as like a teen can take in, but like a different way of looking at it. Yeah. I also remember you when Ben got a mohawk when he was like 12 or something, right? Was that right?
That sounds
11
right.
or 12 or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe even younger.
Yeah.
Definitely not threatening whatsoever. Nowhere near 15.
Yeah.
That I remember you telling him like, the scarier you look, the nicer you have to be to people.
Okay, I don't remember. Okay, that was good advice. Okay, I like that.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah, no, I don't remember giving it, but I'm glad that that's good. Oh, thanks for telling me that.
Oh, you don't remember that?
Oh God, no.
Oh, I'm sure he does. Yeah, I remember it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very deliberate. And even when listening to that last chapter, part of me is like, well, if your parents knew that philosophy that, you know, had been imparted upon you, and like the way you describe it and whether or not that is like the reality of like what exactly happened. And like, of course, being outwardly happy or positive is different than being in your own house, like reacting to your parents, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, actually, that is the way to stop being a sullen teen, right? Where it's like, okay, I've got this mohawk, I've got these combat boots, you know, I look like I could start some shit, but I'm going to smile so fucking big.
Yeah. I'm
going to be so polite.
Yeah. I mean, and doing it that way and kind of subverting square culture's assumptions felt way more countercultural than being like actually like, you know, like a TV version of a punk.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Totally. It is like a new level of punk rock because it is so surprising.
Check out my garden. Yeah.
I love that as a philosophy.
Yeah.
But that also means that I can be as mean as I want to. Which, honestly, white woman privilege is that philosophy.
Yeah.
I don't look scary to society, but I could be scary as fuck. Like,
yeah,
as like, you know.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to say that out loud, but yeah, I think that's really true.
No, I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't act that way, but like, I can definitely see how some white women have pulled in that lesson, you know?
Yeah.
I loved the introduction to Dan Jones. I'm going to try not to say his real name.
Yeah.
Dan Jones.
It's Dan.
Of like, he had this important place in your society of like, working at that pizza shop. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God.
Anyway.
Giving away shit at your work is the best.
It's the best.
Living in Olympia, like giving away stuff from the places that you worked was its own economy. You know what I mean? It was like this, you know, tiny town, and the little downtown was kind of like, you know, employed by all these people who knew each other, and no one had any money, but like between like fucking bagels and like video rentals, or even like being able to like erase someone's late fees or like,
yes.
Entrance into the movie theater. All of these things were just kind of like, it was like this kind of like flowy sort of thing. Coffee. None of those businesses lasted very long.
Well, I mean, another case to just get rid of money entirely. When you were writing these,
mm-hmm.
What were there things that you didn't include?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean,
or things that you want to talk about that you didn't include?
Yeah, I mean, I was really scared that I was going to get sent away, Like I did not know like how desperate my parents were about me, And the thing is that like, I didn't actually smoke that much pot, but I had, basically I bought some weed in like April or something like that, and I did keep it in the battery compartment of my broken Walkman.
Sounds
fucking
so smart.
Great hiding
Brilliant.
spot.
So brilliant. You don't think she actually found that?
She did. Well, and actually, and how she found it was because, and I said she was psychic, but like, or she thought she was psychic, but like, it was because I wrote my friend who was already at summer camp about being stoned at 9th grade graduation.
Oh.
And it was like I hadn't mailed it yet, and my mom read the letter. And then
God.
Searched my room, and that's why I told her to fuck off, was because like, and I just could. It was just too much to do in the story. You know what I mean? And so like, so she read this letter. I had actually kind of forgot about this.
Great. This is the juice.
And then searched my room, and so like, my indignation was real.
Sure, especially when you were like, that was such a brilliant place to hide it.
Oh my God, so smart. The battery compartment.
Honestly, like, part of reflecting on like childhood or teenagehood or something, and like having that moment of like, God, that was so smart.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, I just appreciate the way my own mind thinks.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Especially when it's like you're using that special little brain of yours to like get away with shit.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like make a shortcut where there had never been a shortcut before.
Yeah. I thought you described Dad very accurately.
Oh, cool.
Super accurately, at least for me.
Yeah. But that tooth thing, I don't know, like I just had this like image because his bottom front tooth was kind of like twisted a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just had this like memory, and maybe a little yellowish, and I just have this memory of like when he would get mad, just like seeing that tooth, and it felt like it would just like come alive. You know what I mean?
Well, it may not surprise you to hear this, but I didn't get in trouble that much.
Oh, fuck off.
So
you didn't see the tooth move.
No, I didn't. I saw it twisted, but yeah. I definitely saw him mad, but it was never that many times at me.
Oh, God, that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
One time, I took a big thing of a big bowl of chicken soup and go in and watch The Simpsons, and Dad was like, "Put that bowl on a plate so you don't spill it." And I didn't, and then I spilled it all over myself in the chair, and I was like, it was burned so bad, and he was just so mad because he told me to put it on a plate.
Legit.
So mad. He was so mad.
Yeah. Well,
like too mad. Too mad for
too,
yeah.
Yeah. Mad and then extra. Yeah. I mean, as someone who is like telling people to put plates under bowls these days, you know what I mean?
Do you ever feel like have you ever done something as a parent who you're like, oh shit, that was Dad?
As a parent, more as a husband. Honestly.
Really?
Yeah. Not the stuff,
the cheating,
not the cheating,
philandering,
but like snapping.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so that's some shit to work on that has been worked on. But yeah, definitely like, oh yeah, that was some learned shit, and based on like not knowing how to say sorry, not knowing how to
totally.
like all these things. I'm trying to be pretty conscientious, of what I'm taking from both my parents,
Definitely. And you, not to spoil everything, because maybe you write about this, but you got back in touch with Dan Jones semi-recently, right?
Well,
is this a good time to talk about this, or should we save it?
Well, we are not in touch at all.
Oh, okay.
He actually, well, crazily, he sent a postcard to my work. Like he like Googled me and found where I worked.
Okay.
And then like I wrote him back, and I know a tiny bit about him, but
Okay.
I've tried to get back in touch. But his name, similarly, like I named him Dan Jones in this because his name is similarly impossible to Google or hunt down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he, as you may remember from this, he was 15 and he was reading books about how to. Literally, he owned a book called How to Get Lost and Never Be Found.
Yeah.
And he was like, I swear to God, we would like go to cemeteries, because there's a thing where like if you find somebody who basically like a baby who like died really young.
Yeah, you can take their social security number.
Yeah, because you can find their death certificate, and with a death certificate, like it's legal to ask for someone else's death certificate, and with that you can get a birth certificate, and with that you can so there's all these things, and so that's like so like we're fucking 15 and going through, like maybe
yeah,
that.
But do you think he did that? I mean, not that specifically, but is that like that was just always going to be the course of his life?
We'll get into it in episodes, but I'll just say like he did everything. Like all that he became a master of all that shit. But yeah, we have connected every once in a while, and then just years will go by, and it's just up to him to find me again.
Yeah. How interesting.
Yeah.
People are strange. When you're a stranger.
No, please don't. Anything but that.
Well, this was great.
Thank you. Thanks.
It was fun, really, right?
Yeah. Let me see what we're at.
Yeah, what's coming down the pike?
All right, hold on. I have a little. Oh yeah. Okay, so next time you get to hear about my first band.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. That was.
Do you want to give the name right now?
Yeah, I actually no, because naming the band was part of it.
Never mind. We'll have to wait.
But I do use the band's real name.
Great.
Yeah. And I felt like I could use that real name because nothing happened. So
yeah, and also that's like before the internet really took off, right?
You know how old I am, right?
I'm so sorry. That was before the internet, right? Well, can't wait to find out how old you are on the next episode.
All right, well, bye. Carry on with the rest of your lovely day.
Thanks, you too. Stay cool. I love you.
I love you too. Bye.
Bye. Oh, man, I'm laughing. But why am I laughing?
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard, please tell a friend and subscribe. Your 5-star rating will help others find this fucking podcast. Please check out the show notes for links to Katie's comedy and a full transcript of the show. La Jolla Babylon Season 1, The Making of a Suburban Punk, was written, produced, and edited by Aaron Hartman, with music by Aaron Hartman. co-piloted by Katie Hartman, presented in association with Ruinous Media. To hear more episodes of this show or other Ruinous Media podcasts, please go to ruinousmedia.com or wherever you get your podcasts.